As of the release of this video, there are 63 unique Warframes, not counting their prime variants. Some come from quests, some from missions, some from shops. How long does it take to get each and every Warframe? I'm Nick Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. Warframes are scattered all across the game in terms of where and how to farm them. To help you better see at a glance how long each farm is, I'll be condensing all of these quirks and differences into a simple star rating system. If there are more stars, the further away the goal of having that frame fully assembled. Primarily then, this covers how broadly progressed you need to be to attempt a farm or construction, how much time you'll likely spend getting the blueprints, how much time you'll likely spend getting the resources for the blueprints, and finally, how often and for how long you'll be denied progress because a farm is simply not available right now. At the very beginning, in the very early game up to Jupiter and Europa, there are no significant progression locks. Oh sure, you actually need to move through the nodes and quests to get around the star chart, but then I have to assume you actually want to play Warframe. In our earliest of earlies, we have Rhino. Rhino is technically not the first Warframe blueprint you're introduced to. That's either Gara if you break off from the suggested path and do Sire's Vigil really early, or Garuda if you follow the main path and unlock a blueprint from Voxelaris. Realistically, however, Rhino is the first farmable frame. Not only that, Rhino's acquisition has been made easier. In June 2025, the crafting materials were overhauled, removing the demand for Morphix, Salvage and Gallium. This means Rhino can be constructed with materials only from Earth and Venus, rather than having to go as far as Mars to obtain Salvage and Gallium. Much of the required resources will already have been obtained just by getting to Rhino's farm from the Jackal. Now, while the resources are quick and simple, the assassination mission does still use random drops. While the average player will only need to run the mission 5 times for a full Rhino set, with 1 in 5 players getting him in 3 runs, there's still the risk of going longer. 1 in 5 players will need over 8 runs, 1 in 20 need over 13 runs, 1 in 1,000 need over 28 runs. This is a fundamental feature of most Warframe farms, with randomness as an element you have no control over. This is still a fast mission though, so long as you pay attention to what you're doing. For that then, Rhino only needs half a star for the time to get the blueprints, and half a star for the time to get the very basic materials, putting him at just 1 star. Every other Warframe has greater resource or access demands than Rhino. For Banshee, Nezha, Volt and Wukong, they all require a neural sensor to build, among other requirements. While you can go out of your way to scramble through a specific bounty on the plains of Eidolon, or cross your fingers when hunting far too many hidden caches on Deimos, the first real location to get this resource is Jupiter. That's still a very early game planet, but it does represent a not insignificant barrier to getting these frames built, even if you pick Volt as your starter. Likewise, Zephyr requires a full 600 Oxium. While that is obtainable from ordinary missions as soon as Venus, it's not exactly something you'll get in 5 minutes even as a high level player. What those 5 Warframes have in common though is that there's no direct farming needed to get their blueprints. Each one can be fully unlocked just by joining an existing clan with the blueprints earned in their Tenolab. You join the clan, build the clan key, visit the dojo, and print off the blueprints you need. As the clan key has a build time on it, you can use that time to actually get the resources and credits necessary. Because these resources are a bit more involved for a new player, I'm rating each of them 1 star on that basis. However, as there's no other time gate, progression, or risk of bad drop RNG, that's their entire rating. These are among the easiest frames in all of Warframe. As you'll have sauntered around the very early star chart, you'll no doubt come across the other assassinations that litter the maps. Excalibur, Frost, Mag, Nekros, Nova and Valkyr are rewards from the assassination missions on Mars, Ceres, Phobos, Deimos, Europa and Jupiter respectively. Half of these are side paths, not critical for the main storyline, but still well worth attending to for their rewards when you're ready to hit up the classic Warframe grinds. Just like with Rhino, each of these have randomized drops among their parts. Just like with Rhino then, most people will only need a handful of runs, but unlucky players can see themselves going for quite a few rounds. Unless you have absolutely no idea what you're doing though, each set of blueprints will be acquired in well under an hour, and often under half an hour even as a rookie. For that reason, their farms are only half a star each. The resources can be a bit more demanding than Rhino, more like the Dojo frames, so we'll add on a star there, bringing them to 1.5 stars each. One other very early game Warframe is available from an assassination mission too, but it's one that's not always available. The Forward Assassination mission is unlocked by an infested invasion of an assassination node. This alternative mission rewards Nyx components in a style identical to most other assassinations. In itself, it's no harder a farm than any other assassination mission, but the potential for it to spawn out of reach or simply not be accessible at all creates our first soft lock, adding 1 extra star to Nyx and bringing her to 2.5 stars. If she just so happens to be available in an easy to handle location right away for you, like happened with Dan in my Zero to Hero series, then that's just good fortune. Before we travel beyond Jupiter, a few more very early game Warframes are there for the taking. In Warframe's equivalent of a battle pass, the Nightwave system, lurks Vauban. To be clear, this system is completely free, with no means to throw money at it, even if you wanted to. Vauban's components are all picked up for Nightwave creds. As the first level of Nightwave awards 150 creds, and Vauban's set only costs 75, it's exceptionally easy to grab his blueprints. The materials are similar to many other very early frames, and includes that crucial neural sensor again. So for the tiniest bit of effort to get some Nightwave challenges done at 0.5 stars, and then 1 star for the materials, Vauban is only 1.5 stars to obtain. If you've spent all of your cred, you can wait for more, or hold out for a backup option in the circuit, which I'll cover later in the video. The final Warframes in the very early game are locked behind their respective quests. This is how you can obtain Limbo, Koumei, and Yareli. Limbo requires completion of the Europa Junction, the last of the very early game junctions, and one of those side paths. 1 quest later, you have his components, and need only build them. With 1 star for the quest, and 1 star for the material hunt, that's a 2-star frame. Then we have Yareli. Her quest comes online the moment you finish Fox Solaris on the 2nd planet. Like with Limbo, she has 1 star for the quest to get her main blueprint. Her parts blueprints can be printed off from your clan's dojo, this time in the Bash Lab, but the materials are a little more exotic than Rhino. She calls for tellurium, nitin extract, and Venerdo alloy, among other materials. None of these are truly arduous to obtain, but it does mean some time spent focusing on getting those. For nitin in particular, you really want to be picking it up from a Nightwave store for creds, as the other farming options are truly abysmal. With 1.5 stars for her material demands then, Yareli comes in at 2.5 stars. For those who watched the previous video 3 years ago, I am re-rating her material costs up from before, as the runaround for a very early game player outpaces the work of more normal build costs for this tier. Finally, at this tier is Koumei. She is locked behind a combo of the Sire's Vigil and Once Awake quests. Both are very early game quests, and the pair completed gives you access to the Koumei farm on Earth. It's an unusual but simple enough mission, quite manageable even for new players with basic modding. Koumei's acquisition is, however, an unusual one for so early into the game, indicative of being released in 2024. Each run of the mission has a low chance per blueprint, just 4.09%, giving you around a 1 in 7 chance of any blueprint each time, including duplicates. While that would feel rough if that's all you got, the mission also awards a currency item called Fate Pearls, roughly 16 per mission in normal mode. You can buy Koumei parts and other rewards from Koumei's shrine in Cetus after running this mission a few times. Each Koumei part blueprint costs 55 Fate Pearls, while the main blueprint costs 165. So even if you don't get a single drop of the blueprints yourself, which is unlikely, you can still get the entire set with pearls. A further 102 Fate Pearls are needed to construct Koumei, so with average pearl drops and 0 blueprint rewards, you'll have enough pearls in 27 runs of the mission, basically guaranteed. For average luck, Koumei can be fully farmed in about 16 runs on normal mode, including the Fate Pearls. With a casual 5-minute runtime, that comes out to around 1.5 hours. After the Fate Pearls, she just needs a handful of easily accessed basic resources and low-tier Planes of Eidolon materials. Combining the details then, she's a very early game 1.5 star grind time and 1 star on the additional material needs. Koumei is 2.5 stars. She clearly has the highest amount of average grind of all very early game Warframes, although the resource needs are a little gentler than some. Next up, we have the Warframes that become available to farm after reaching Saturn, but before completing the crucial main story quest, The War Within. Any missions available earlier than this, but have levels comparable to the second half of the star chart, also fit into this tier. We've reached the early game. Yes, just early, up from very early game. Starting simple are the assassination farms for Ember on Saturn, Hydroid on Earth, and Loki on Neptune. These 3 missions are a step up from the earliest missions in terms of difficulty, but no step up at all when it comes to the actual grind time using the classic assassination drop tables. Appropriately equipped, you can bash out each of these in just a few runs, each run just a few minutes, no sweat. For the Vayhek fight in particular on Earth, one simple step to make the mission substantially easier and faster is that you don't actually have to fight him for 60% of the mission. All of the early arena rooms you encounter him in can be skipped by just figuring out which way the mission continues and going down that path. In the end, you only fight his flying form in the final arena room, followed by his terror frame form. For these 3, it's 1 star for the tier, half a star for the parts farm, and then only half a star for the material needs. Their needs aren't lower than the earlier assassination frames, but by this level of the game, you should have a much lower need for all resources, and an easier time getting whatever it is you're missing. Effectively, the other half a star is in the tier star. The other planets and moons in the later part of the star chart have further assassination nodes, but they come with certain details which increase the farm significantly. At the top on Sedna is the farm for Saryn by defeating Gyre de Tame. While the fight itself isn't too troublesome, it's not the shortest encounter due to the survival and target shooting minigame it hoists upon you. That said, the target shooting section can be nearly bypassed by way of weapons like the Ignis or a primary gaze kit gun. Their damage is in a small AoE at the contact point, just large enough to hit the target through the rotating covering panel and seriously expedite the process. What really makes Saryn take longer though is you also have to earn the judgment points from the arena missions on Sedna before you're even allowed to face Kayla. So with this extra step added in, the Saryn farm climbs to 2.5 stars. A little earlier on Pluto is the farm for Trinity. She again has a standard assassination drop table, but facing the ambulance for a farm requires you to gather the beacons from other Pluto missions, a not tiny process in itself. The mission for Trinity is also noticeably longer than many others, but it has been recently reduced to be more reasonable. Soloing it with a strong setup, I can cut through the mission in about 8.5 minutes, down from the roughly 12 it used to be. With the setup time and normal resource demands included, Trinity is a 3-star farm. And then there is Equinox. Her farm resides only on Uranus, with no requirements needed to access the mission other than to reach it. And yet, it is an infamous one for taking a longer time than many others. Why? Equinox is not built from 3 components and 1 main blueprint. She requires 6 components, 3 each for a day aspect and a night aspect. Those components are then combined into the core aspect forms, which have their own blueprints, and then you combine those 2 aspects into the final form of Equinox. This means the boss fight with Tile Rigger has not 3 or 4 pieces to acquire, but 8. You don't need to be a statistician to know that more parts means more runs, and unfettered RNG means a greater risk of lots of runs being required. With appropriate gear and navigational skills to get in and out as fast as possible, you can complete the mission in under 3 minutes. The average person will require 20 runs to get all parts, clocking in then around an hour to obtain all of those blueprints. If your luck is worse though, that climbs quickly. 1 in 5 people will need more than 28 runs, 1 in 20 will need over 39 runs, 1 in 1,000 need over 69 runs. That's a lot of duplicate parts. You may be less excited, more relieved when the last piece finally drops. So with 1 star for the tier, half a star for the materials, and 1.5 stars for the actual farming time, where even if you're fast and lucky, you still hit a minimum 156 hours crafting time, Equinox deserves her 3-star rating. Around this time, you can pick up some optional quests which unlock some Warframes. Mirage, Titania and Inaros are all unlocked this way, with all components earned by doing their quest. These quests take a not insignificant amount of time, going out of your way to obtain them, and you still need to do the actual construction. It's a simple enough process, giving us 1 star for their tier, 1 star for their respective quests, and half a star for the material needs. 2.5 stars each. However, Inaros gets 1 extra star, as you can't just start his quest. Unlocking Sands of Inaros means buying it from Barakatia. It's a simple purchase, but it requires not only the cost to buy it, but also waiting for Baron to turn up. As he's not always around, that's 1 more star for the softlock, a 3.5 star rating for Inaros. Do note that you can trade for the Sands of Inaros quest starter from another player, a workaround if you aren't waiting to trade with Barrow. As you progress, you'll no doubt also be progressing with a core syndicate. I'm not going to get into a debate as to which syndicate is best, and that's because it doesn't matter to Dagath's farm. By reaching rank 2 with any core syndicate, the 6 which are displayed together on the first page of the syndicate's interface, you can obtain Abyssal Beacons. These are needed to access the unique Abyssal Zone mission around Ceres. This unique mission has no matchmaking, requiring you to either form a squad yourself or run solo. Whoever is host is the only person who needs an Abyssal Beacon for the whole squad. Running the mission is simple enough, awarding you Vein Thorns as a material reward. 102 Vein Thorns are required to construct Dagath, which will take you on average 15 runs on normal mode, or as many as 17 if you're unlucky. Once obtained, you can head over to your clan dojo, enter Dagath's Hollow, and print off the necessary blueprints to construct her. Then, with some slightly elevated material demands atop the Vein Thorns, you have yourself Dagath. Running the Dagath mission only takes about 3 minutes, so easily under an hour to get all the materials. However, you also need to get standing for the beacons, unless you have friends sharing the cost, which is both an extra step and a bit of a soft lock due to the daily standing limit. For that reason, she's 1 star for tier, 1 star for the material grind, and half a star for the standing limit. It's far from a huge barrier to entry, as you can play with others, but it's still a barrier, bringing her to that 2.5 stars. Speaking of syndicates, with the progression needed to hit very early game, you'll be strong enough to solo the lower tier bounties on the open worlds. This means easy access to the farm for Gara on Earth. While she is otherwise available to farm from the very early game, level 20 to 40 Cetus bounties are a bit more to ask than just removing Captain Vor from this mortal coil. Gara's components are split across the first 3 tiers of bounty, and can be obtained from every rotation, so there's no soft lock on getting her parts. Since the very recent changes to bounty stages, it's no longer possible to seek and farm a super fast set of bounty missions, but the longer stages have also been reduced in duration. For the average player who's not attempting to speed farm, most everyone at the stage of getting Gara, this is a small buff over the past. Doing full bounties with bonus included, a full Gara set is obtained in typically just 6 bounties. Again, easily doable in under an hour. 1 in 20 players will need over 11 bounties, and 1 in 1,000 will need over 18 bounties completed. Once you have all of Gara's blueprints, building her will send you out of your way a little bit. She needs a mix of Plains resources and normal StarChat resources, including exploration material like Cetus Wisps and Iridite, fishing material from sharks, and various mining material like Pyrotic Alloy and Escher Devar. Much of this you could also get from Tusk Thumpers, but farming them early game is an even greater time cost. In total then, she's 1 star for tier, 1 for the bounties, and 1 for the materials, giving Gara a simple 3-star rating. Lavos is obtained entirely from Father's Wares in the Necrolisk. Despite getting access to Father's Shop in the very early game, Lavos' components require rank 3 with the Entrati to even purchase, plus extra standing to both buy his blueprints and the blueprints for refining the gems needed to build him, so I'm pushing him to early game. On top of this, Lavos demands 2000 Titanium, a resource only found in Railjack. You can queue into Railjack without building your own, getting on someone else's ship, and you'll get all the Titanium you need for him in your first mission, so long as you actually loot the area. It's debatable if he should go up a progression tier for Railjack alone, but I'm erring on not doing so as it's very accessible via public matchmaking. It would otherwise be like ignoring Helene Defense, because you'll likely find a squad there any day of the week. When it comes to buying Lavos' blueprints themselves, this is a very easy task. He needs a total of 20,000 standing, technically 36,000 when you add on the gems. As a tier 4 bounty from Mother pays out 76 tokens, worth 100 standing each, even if you hit no bonuses you'll be done in an hour with no RNG to play around. If that's too much of an ask just yet, you could still handle the lower tier bounties and grab the tokens in short order. Not a fan of bounties? The tokens for the other members of the Entrati family were very recently buffed too, meaning father, daughter, son, otak and grandmother tokens are now all much more valuable, an actual standing option besides bounties. It's then a matter of getting the resources needed for Lavos through a bit of mining, Railjack and other mission locations that do add up more so than the tokens. This gives Lavos a 1-star tier rating, 1.5 stars for the blueprint, and 1.5 stars for his material demands. He's a 4-star effort. with access to the full star chart means access to the full spread of spy mission loot. This introduces the ability to farm Ivara. Spy missions are rather polarizing, with some players loving them and others begging for ways to never have to deal with them again. Should you indulge in these, Ivara's parts are split into 3 groups. Her systems come from low-level spy missions, including Earth through to Phobos. Her chassis comes from mid-level spy missions from Ceres through to Saturn, plus the Lua spy mission. Her main blueprint and neuroptics come from higher-level spy missions, from Uranus through to Sedna. Alternatively, if you do Railjack, the Corpus spy missions at each new location award a different piece, with the main blueprint at the end in the Veil Proxima. These drops are not a high rate. In Railjack, each piece comes with a 12% drop rate, but also a substantially longer mission time, which, for the part alone, is absolutely not worth it. If you can handle those mission objectives quickly though, the other rewards Railjack gives may outweigh this for you. Most people will be better off with the normal spy missions, with individual drop rates as low as 5.64% for the chassis on not Lua missions, or 7.37% when on Lua. You also may secure a handful of very useful mods, like Rhyme Rounds, so I strongly recommend actually doing these missions, but I also appreciate why many people would rather not. Due to the low drop rates, getting Ivara in just 4 missions is beyond low. Just 0.006% of people will get each Ivara piece in 4 runs without visiting Lua. On average, doing non-Lua missions will take 43 runs for a full Ivara, down to 40 runs if you run Lua Spy for the chassis, or an average of 31 runs if you do Railjack for all parts. Only 3.5% of players will be unlucky enough to need over 100 core star chart missions, with a 1 in 1,000 chance for you to need over 164 runs, or 144 if you include Lua. After getting all her parts, construction is relatively easy. The material costs are higher than many assassination frames, including 9 Nitane extract, but by the time you're farming Ivara, you definitely should have bought a bunch of that from Nightwave. All told then, Ivara claims 1 star for the tier, half a star for the materials, and a full 3 stars for the mission running needed to get her. That's 4.5 stars for her, our highest yet. More than just mission nodes, the early game opens up a number of quests, some optional, some main story. Many of these quests don't directly reward you with Warframes, instead they unlock the ability to obtain them. The Jordas Precept, the New Strange, Patient Zero, Octavia's Anthem, and Duviri Paradox all fall into this category. The Jordas Precept unlocks the Jordas Golem assassination on Eris. The quest itself is simple, and the fight against the Jordas Golem is easy enough if you actually mod your arc gun to deal damage. Many players first encountering this boss will have neglected to do so, making it seem like far more of a pain than it actually needs to be. Aside from being a uniquely space-based fight, there's nothing special about the farm itself, with standard assassination drop rates and build costs. So for Atlas, that's 1 star for the tier, 1 for the quest, half a star for the mission farming, and half a star for the resources. A simple 3-star farm. The New Strange unlocks the Chroma main blueprint, but doesn't directly open up the other blueprints. Those are obtained by completing the junctions to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Chroma uniquely requires other Warframes pieces in order to be built, with the top end piece being a drop from Killer to Tame on Sedna. Getting Chroma is much more about farming those quote-unquote resources in the form of other Warframe components, with the quest itself being a quick process and the parts just along your normal Warframe journey. So 1 star for the tier, half a star for the quest, and 1.5 stars for the split of components of Ember, Frost and Saryn and building them. Vault's component you just buy from your clan dojo. Chroma clocks in at 3 stars. Mesa is unlocked by completing the other assassination node on Eris, opened up by doing the Patient Zero quest. Unlike with Atlas though, where you can just pop into that node anytime once you get there, this assassination requires you to build Mutalist Alad V assassinate keys. Each key requires 1 Mutalist Alad V nav coordinate, obtained from some infested invasion mission payouts. This represents a significant barrier to entry, especially as the invasions themselves are not repeatedly farmable. You have to wait for an appropriate one to appear, run it 3 times, wait for the payout, then wait for the key to build, and then run the Mesa mission once. Not exactly accessible. You can share this key with a squad of friends, vastly reducing the overall cost per mission, though you may struggle to find enough players to fill out the squad. So despite Mesa being normal enough in terms of drop rate and build materials, giving 1 star from tier, 0.5 from mission, and 0.5 from materials, we must add on more. First an extra half star for the quest, another half star for obtaining the keys, taking the assumption you split the cost with one other person to reduce it down a chunk, and a full 2 stars for the indefinite waiting for each new coordinate to become available and later paid out. Mesa is a 5-star farm. Octavia's Anthem then brings us her main blueprint and Mandicord, necessary to be able to construct her. Unlike the others here, Octavia's quest doesn't unlock the nodes to get her pieces, as they're available through main story progression. Still, this will see you hunting down caches on Lure Exterminate, holding out for 20 minutes at a time on Deimos Survival, and picking out the Lure music puzzle when you find one for a guaranteed Octavia chassis drop. While the caches aren't too terrible to raid, with a 22.56% chance of getting it and only 1 cache needed, the survival farm for Octavia can be a doozy. At 22.56% every 20 minutes, some people will be done first time, but most will be in for multiple runs. Adding it all up, farming the components for Octavia is on average a 2-hour grind, assuming a bit under 6 minutes for an exterminate with 1 cache found, or a lure mission with the music puzzle done. About 1 in 20 people though will spend 4 hours in that Deimos Survival with no Octavia to show for it. About 1 in 1,000 will hit 7 hours there without a drop. Even once you have her parts, she then has some increased material demands over many frames. 1,000 Oxium, 2,000 Kuva, over 4,000 Plastids, just to name some bits. Because of all this, Octavia's tier gives her 1 star, 1 more for the quest, 2 for the parts, and 1 star for the material grind. Octavia is a 5-star process. Before we touch on the final questlog frame at this stage, let's sweep back over to Mars. Having leveled up enough to handle Titania Pass, you can farm the Mirror Defense node for Citrine. Citrine's farm is not a gentle one. Her parts each drop only from Rotation C of Mirror Defense, a roughly 25-minute mission for 1 try of the blueprints. Each component has a 6.1% drop rate, while the main blueprint is a 9.3% drop rate. So after 25 minutes of zooming around the map, there's a 72.4% chance you don't get a Citrine part at all. Thankfully, this mission comes with a currency in the form of Belric and Rania crystals. Completing rounds and collecting crystal fragments in the mission will award more of these currency crystals, giving you an alternative way of picking up blueprints. Do not spend crystals until you are ready to be finished with the farm. Spending earlier simply opens you up to Lady Luck, dropping the part you just bought, wasting your currency. The presence of this currency creates curious spikes in completion. If you're collecting crystals at a fast rate on normal mode, you go from a 9.3% chance of getting a full set in 6 runs to a 37.8% chance of a full set in 7 runs as you cross the threshold to afford a crucial piece. At a fast rate, most people will be done in 9 runs. A modest crystal gathering rate means typically 10 runs, while a slow crystal gathering rate pushes that to 12 runs. For even a fast gathering pace, that's still on average of nearly 4 hours to farm up Citrine's parts, with the shop system being crucial to keeping that time from going any longer. Once you have the parts, you'll still need to get the materials, including 2 sets of gems from the Cambion Drift on Deimos, necessitating you pick up their blueprints too. For all this, Citrine gets 1 star for tier, 1 for materials, and 4 stars for mission time, a solid 6-star grind. Which brings us to the final early game Warframe, Kullervo, obtainable once you've completed the main story quest, the Duviri Paradox. Kullervo is only obtainable by completing a lone story or Duviri experience run during anger, fear, or sorrow spirals. This means that for 4 hours out of every 10, Kullervo cannot be farmed. If the correct mood is in rotation, you take on a Duviri spiral with your random selection of gear, defeat the Aura Worm, and challenge Kullervo at Kullervo's hold. Be aware that doing a lone story is gambling on Kullervo's hold being a core objective, as you cannot complete optional objectives in that mode. For Kullervo farming, stick to the Duviri experience. If you both defeat Kullervo and an Aura Worm, you'll receive Kullervo's Bane to trade with Akrathis, the Duviri vendor, for Kullervo blueprints. You'll need 42 Banes in total, receiving on average 5 per normal run of Duviri. For most people then, that's 9 runs of Duviri, with at worst 11 runs if you get unlucky on the random drops. A typical Duviri run with a Kullervo's Hold side objective is around 20 to 25 minutes, depending on the objectives you're handed. This means typically around 3 hours to get Kullervo's blueprints. But hold on, you also need to get the materials. Kullervo demands a broad selection of Duviri materials, most of which you'll need to go out of your way to obtain. All told, that's 1 star for the tier, 0 stars for the quest as it's a main story one baked into the tiers of progression, 3 stars for the mission time, 1.5 stars for the resource grind, and a further 1 star for the softlock on accessing Kullervo's Hold due to spiral emotions. Kullervo sits at a heavy 6.5 stars, the peak rating for any early game farm. The Duviri paradox doesn't just unlock Kullervo though. Duviri also provides access to the circuit, an alternative means of acquiring various Warframes among other rewards. It doesn't matter which frame you pick for the week in the circuit, the actual process is identical any which way. In order to get a complete Warframe set of blueprints from the circuit, you must reach the tier 10 reward. Doing so takes a minimum of 23 successful stages if done in a row, up to 37 stages if you bizarrely only do 1 stage per run. This is not a short process. On the fast end, this is about 1.5 hours, up to 2 or 2.5 hours if you have difficulty doing rounds quickly or leave and restart frequently. The circuit also does not award any significant resources towards building a Warframe, only allows you to farm 1 Warframe a week through it, and only lets you select 1 of 3 Warframes for that week. If you wanted one of the other 30 frames in the circuit rotation, tough, come back when it's available. However, the circuit is not a simple do it or don't process. Let's say you're farming for a frame and have obtained everything except its neuroptics. Tier 2, requiring just 4 rounds of the circuit, is enough to get the neuroptics for whichever Warframe you selected. Earlier, I talked about the potentially long grind to get the neuroptics for Octavia. With the circuit, you could do it guaranteed faster than an ordinary farm can roll a single chance of dropping the part. So long as you're able to wait for Octavia to be available this way, next showing is March 23rd, 2026, and you're happy to not select one of the other 2 options that week, then this is a benefit. Likewise, any chassis is available at the 5th reward, after as little as 8 rounds of the circuit, and systems at the 8th reward, a minimum of 16 rounds. It's not always going to be the answer to your problems, but it can bypass an otherwise difficult hurdle. Overall, due to the sheer waiting on circuit rotations, the reset of all tier progress if you didn't reach a reward within the week, and the actual time spent getting to and completing the circuit, it's fair to rate it as much as 7 stars, 4 of them for the softlock. For the vast majority of Warframes, this won't be a faster way to get a whole set, even when in rotation. So now we transition into the mid-game. We're past anything largely considered just a tutorial, unlocking the operator, working on the first half of Railjack missions, and leveling syndicates in advance of tackling the new war. If you're still with me this far into the video, make sure you subscribed and consider supporting the channel on Patreon too. You get more behind the scenes, meet the math behind the videos, and access to the supporter tea lounge on Discord. Now, on with the frames. Revenant is obtainable after completing the optional Mask of the Revenant quest, or you can pre-farm his components. From tier 3 to 5 Plains of Eidolon bounties, you can only get his main blueprint from his quest, one which requires both the Warvin completed and additional steps with the quills. Handling a few bounties should be no issue for a mid-game player, but the drop tables can still be a bit unforgiving. While most people will need 7 or fewer bounties, 1 in 20 will need over 16 bounties, and 1 in 1,000 will need over 30 bounties. The material costs, however, are trivial for a mid-game progress player. All said then, it's 2 stars for tier, 2 stars for farming the parts and quest. Revenant is a 4-star frame. Although available through the circuit, Revenant is easy enough to get and shares his week with Cora. I do not recommend picking up Revenant for your circuit reward unless he's the best worst choice left to you. Then we have Grendel. Grendel I previously rated as a tier 3, as you used to need to complete the entire star chart to access arbitrations. With continuous additions to what the star chart actually is, DE decided to pull this right back and grant access to arbitrations partway through meeting requirements for the Eris Junction, including completion of the second dream. So with that reduction in demand, Grendel's farm is available a whole stage sooner. To get Grendel, complete arbitrations to acquire Vitus Essence, both as round rewards and as a drop from arbitration drones. 25 essence is enough to buy 1 locator to unlock a single run for a Grendel component blueprint with a guaranteed reward. This means that solo, you'll only ever need 75 Vitus essence to get Grendel, down to 25 Vitus essence if you share your locator with 2 other players doing the same thing. Make sure these are players you trust. You don't want to spend your locator supporting them, only to have them vanish without upholding their end of the bargain for the next mission. Grendel's component missions are truly unique. No weapon mods or arcanes, companion mods, Incarna modes, nor operator mode are available during the mission. Even on your Warframe, the only thing that will function are augment mods. For a lot of frames and weapons, this becomes a serious challenge. If, however, you've been following this as a step-by-step plan to get your frames, you'll have Lavos already. Lavos with his Valence Formation augment makes these missions easy. Infuse Toxin to delete every enemy with every ability and grant yourself triple weapon damage. The Corpus do not stand a chance, although you have ample health, armor, and self-healing with no energy mechanic to worry about. I recommend combining him with a Spoil Ace's secondary kit gun, an exceptionally easy to use weapon for these missions. Other frames can work too, like Protea, Trinity, Hildren, and Noko, but Lavos is just incredible here. Having completed the missions and obtained the guaranteed blueprints, Grendel's construction requires a mix of normal star chart materials and a selection of animal products from the plains of Eidolon. Grendel likes to eat well after all. It's a little bit of material gathering, out of the way of many players' usual resource stockpiles, but not a long road. This gives Grendel 2 stars for tier, 2.5 stars for getting Vitus Essence into component blueprints, and finally half a star for the animal harvest, 5 stars for the Grendel farm. With access to the lower half of Railjack, finally passing the block halfway into Venus Proxima by completing the wall within, you can farm Oberon. Oberon's components drop from just completing Earth Proxima and Saturn Proxima missions, with a drop chance rolled for each core boarding objective you complete. This means the Sova Strait mission on Earth Proxima cannot provide Oberon parts, as there is no boarding objective. On average, players will need 22 runs of these missions to obtain Oberon, with 1 in 20 players needing over 52 runs, and 1 in 1,000 needing over 93 runs. The RNG does not go gently on this one. These missions can be done handily in under 4 minutes though, so the average farm time for Oberon is a cool 1.5 hours, maybe closer to 2 hours when accounting for Railjack loading and unloading times. His resource costs, however, are trivial, so he's a 2-star for tier and 2-star for farm time, a 4-star Warframe to get. If you're unlucky, bad at Railjack, or just don't want to do it, it takes about as long to get him via the circuit. He shares his week with Nekros and Valkyr, 2 much easier frames to farm, so he's a good choice for a circuit run when available. Another relatively easy farm in the mid-game is for Wisp. I know some veterans watching this just winced, but bugs aside, this is one of the easiest farms left to us now. Wisp is farmed from the Roper low list on Jupiter, and is made much easier by obtaining a decent amp first. At the very least, please do not bring your moat amp. All 3 of her components drop here alongside her main blueprint too, making it a longer farm than many assassination based frames, though still less RNG dependent than Equinox. On average, a typical player will get Wisp in just 7 runs of the Roper low list, with 1 in 20 players needing over 16 runs, or over 30 runs for 1 in 1,000 players. With the mission doable in under 6 minutes, that's an average farm time of under an hour. Also, if you hate seeing the tar covering the screen for the entire run up to the fight, open Nightwave from your pause menu to force remaining dialogue to be overlay free. The materials for Wisp are not so cheap. Wisp demands 1200 hexagon, which if you've not been farming Jupiter for some other reason, likely won't just be in your inventory. So that's 2 stars for progression, 1 star for the mission itself, an extra half star to account for the requirement to get a decent amp or struggle, and then 1 star for the material grind added on top. Wisp's farm is 4.5 stars. On completion of the main story quest, Chains of Harrow, you'll be awarded the Harrow main blueprint. By this point in the game, you will also already have a Harrow chassis blueprint. The Harrow systems and neuroptics, however, don't just drop into your inventory so easily. You can attempt to get the systems from defection missions and the neuroptics from the spy mission Pago on the Kuva Fortress. Or you can farm both from the Kuva Survival mission Taviuni. For the Kuva Survival, both pieces have a 12% drop chance on rotation C, meaning 20 minutes for a roughly 1 in 8 drop chance per piece. The spy mission, however, has a 1 in 6 drop rate and can be done substantially faster, while the defection missions have a roughly 1 in 5 drop rate per rotation C, again achievable faster than the survival. I strongly recommend doing the defection and spy method, though make sure you do bring appropriate frames for the job. On defection, Wisp is amazing for both speed enhancing and healing the defectors. On spy, Wukong with a twin basalt, modded with Rift Strike, can effortlessly navigate the map and bypass all obstacles. With 4 minutes per spy mission and 13 minutes per defection, the average player will have both Harrow pieces in 9 missions, on average taking about an hour and 15 minutes. This is averaging across needing lots of spy missions or lots of defection missions and anywhere in between, so if you get unlucky on the defection, then it will take longer. With the same amount of luck but doing the Kuva survival, it'd take 3 times as long to get the pair of blueprints, over 3 hours. You have to really hate defection for that to be worth it. 1 in 5 players will need over 2 hours of spy and defection, or over 6 hours of survival. 1 in 1,000 will go as far as nearly 6 hours of spy and defection, versus over 20 hours of survival. 2 stars for the tier, 1.5 stars for farm time, and a half star for resources, as it does need quite a few materials for its components. It's easy for one or more of them to be undersupplied by mid-game, depending on where on the star chart you've been spending more time. 4 stars for Harrow. If you complete the optional quest, The Glass Gambit, you pick up the main blueprint for Nidus. All the parts are obtained from the infested salvage mission Ostrus on Eris. Each run requires you to go rotation C for a 1 in 7 drop chance per part. While this means you have nearly 50-50 odds on the first run of getting something Nidus, each acquired part drops the odds of you getting something you actually need. The average player will need 11 or fewer runs to get a full set, taking just over 2 hours at 12 minutes per run. 1 in 20 players will need more than 27 runs, more than 5 hours, while 1 in 1,000 will be stuck with no set after over 10 hours of missions, 52 runs deep. Building Nidus is simple enough, however, that we don't need to add any stars on for that. So with 2 stars for the tier, 1 for the quest, and 2 for the mission time, that's a cool 5 stars for Nidus. If you see him in the circuit, he may be a good choice to pick there if you want to skip both the mission and the quest, though he appears in the same week as Octavia and Harrow, which may sway your decision. Looking back to the Orb Valis, a full 3 Warframes are farmable there at this tier: Garuda, Brooke, and Hildrin. Garuda is available from bounties on the Orb Valis. These bounties are not particularly difficult, about the same intensity as farming Gara earlier. However, constructing Garuda requires toroids of all 3 basic types, Kuva, and high-tier Orb Valis materials. The peak of these is the Thist, requiring a rank 4 locked blueprint to craft. While you can trade the gems from other players, I'm measuring each frame on the basis that you'll meet all the criteria, even if you happen to share a missional key with someone else. For this then, Garuda is only 1 star for the time to get her blueprints, but 2 stars for the progression needed to even be able to craft her, and 2 stars for the time taken to get the materials she wants. Garuda is a 5-star frame, despite likely being the very first main blueprint every new player will get. As the bigger hurdle for Garuda is in the building, not the blueprints, she's not a good pick for the circuit reward path, especially given her competition for a weak slot. Now to be fair, that rank 4 hurdle for crafting her is also relevant to Baruch. For Baruch's farm, you need to rank up Vox Solaris. Little Duck sells all the blueprints for Baruch for standing, so technically all you need to do is reach rank 3 and buy the parts blueprints. He costs 20,000 standing in total, on top of the standing to reach rank 3. Baruch also requires toroids, Valis fish parts, and that rank 4 Solaris gem again, Thist. For the standing to buy Baruch, I would recommend running Profit Taker for the guaranteed 6,000 standing drop in the toroid, doubled or more with appropriate boosts and retriever mods. However, access to that requires rank 5 with Solaris United, as well as the capacity to take down Profit Taker. So while that would have you sorted out quickly, that's also up a tier. Instead, Baruch is obtainable earlier nowadays, as the rank up requirements with Vox Solaris have been reduced, and some of the rank up materials made available at lower ranks for standing. Most notably, Gyre mag systems can be bought at just rank 1 with Vox Solaris. Gathering the necessary toroids to rank up without efficient Profit Taker runs can be a lot slower. You will benefit hugely from loot enhancements like boosters, retriever mods, and even using frames like Nekros. For Baruch then, that's 2 stars for the minimum tier, 2 for the materials, and 1.5 for the standing grind itself. Baruch sits at 5.5 stars. Grabbing Baruch from the circuit will bypass the Vox Solaris standing and rank grind, leaving you with just the materials. Also made easier to access as a result is Hildrin. No longer locked behind heists to rank up Vox Solaris, to then get to buy her blueprint, you can definitely get her sooner. Hildrin's main blueprint is available from Little Duck, just like Baruch, Unfortunately, the Exploiter Orb stole the rest of them, or something like that. Getting her means first getting diluted Thermia from the frequent Thermia Fractures event, and then activating the panel in Deck 12 to run the Exploiter Orb boss fight. Hildren parts drop from the Exploiter Orb, like a normal assassination drop table, so it doesn't take too many runs to get a full set typically. However, you will also need 6 Lazulite Toroids to build Hildren, dropped exclusively by Exploiter Orb, and only 1 per run. Resource boosters and retriever mods can double these, a useful assist if you get the blueprints in fewer than 6 runs, or pick them up from the circuit instead. So once again, that's 2 stars for tier, 1.5 stars for the missions, 1 star for the additional materials, beyond getting her parts normally, and an extra 1 star for the soft lock if you run out of diluted Thermia with no event available. 5.5 stars in total, unless you get someone else to pay the entry cost to the Exploiter Orb fight. Do note, there is a lot of crossover between these frames here. Farming longer for Hildren also means spare Lazulite Toroids, which means spare standing with Little Duck, which means a faster access to Baruch too. Even if you get unlucky one way, it can pay out in another. But that's not all. Reducing the requirements to get Gyromag systems also affects Zaku. Zaku is farmed over on the Cambion Drift from tier 2, 4 and 5 bounties from Mother, with the main blueprint obtained from the very early game quest Heart of Deimos. While the blueprint is available impossibly early, the top level bounty and new means to get Gyromags both sit as mid-game tier, by this video's metric anyway. Running the Zaku dropping bounties will lead to a full set on average in 8 bounties. This climbs to over 17 bounties for 1 in 20 players, or 31 bounties for 1 in 1,000 players. While Zaku's materials are obtainable sooner, you still have to actually go out and do it. This includes craftables from all 3 open worlds, fish parts, scintillant and more. Not a quick resource gathering trip. For Zaku then, this comes to 2 stars for tier, 1.5 for bounties, and 2 stars for materials, a new and improved rating of 5.5 stars. This then brings us to Gauss, who has no quest lock for him specifically. His main blueprint is available on the market for simple everyday credits. His component blueprints, however, all require you to farm the Disruption mission Kappa on Sedna. Each piece is dropped on rotation C only, requiring you to defend all 4 conduits on the 3rd round, or at least 3 conduits on every round thereafter, in an endless mission. Each part comes with a low 7.84% drop rate, giving you less than a 1 in 4 chance of a Gauss part with every run. Now while the drop rate is low, the fact that you can repeatedly roll it every round after the first 2 means the opportunities are far more frequent than most other missions. If we take that you can handle 10 rounds, after which the enemy level skinning becomes a bit much for you perhaps, you should be able to clear that in 36 minutes. Disruption has been made substantially easier over the years, with a very powerful accessibility tool, meaning demolishers are marked at a greater distance than they can be heard. With damage attenuation removed from them too, they're fully vulnerable to normal damage methods. For the average player, all Gauss parts will drop in 20 rotation C rounds, under a couple hours of mission time. 1 in 20 players will need over 50 rounds, and 1 in 1,000 will need over 99 rounds. Getting his parts, however, is only half the battle. Gauss requires materials for the Plains of Eidolon and the Orb Valis. The Thist and Centauran blueprints both require rank 4 with their respective open world syndicates, adding an extra barrier to completing him. Well, unless you've been farming these other frames which also require Thist, in which case you may have done it already. Ignoring the cross-pollination of resources, that's 2 stars for the tier to attempt Gauss's grind, 2 stars for the mission running, and 2 stars for the material demands. Gauss sits at a 6-star frame measured alone, but like with many of these farms, there are some stars overlapping more and more. Now for a frame who is locked behind a quest, it's Protea. Protea's main blueprint is acquired after completing the Deadlock Protocol quest. While this is considered a side quest, it provides the very powerful Zoris glaive weapon, and is necessary for other later quests like the Call of the Tempestari, as well as access to farming many other things. While the quest is available early game, Protea's demand for a not small amount of railjet resources, as well as frequent runs of higher level Granum Voids, means actually getting her in a timely fashion is more of a mid-game activity. Each of her components drop from the Granum Void. Each Granum Void can only award one of the parts depending on the tier you picked, with the Neuroptics, Chassis and Systems available in tiers 1, 2 and 3 respectively. You then need to hit the maximum kill count in the Granum Void within the time limit to even be eligible for a Protea piece, and those pieces come at just a 1 in 9 drop rate with no pity system. Ask almost anyone who's farmed Protea, it's not gentle. The average player will need 24 Granum Voids to get Protea's set, which at 5 minutes per mission will set you back 2 hours of farming time. 1 in 5 players will need over 38 runs, 1 in 20 need over 55 runs, 1 in 1,000 will need over 97 Granum Voids to get a full set. Protea is also not available in the circuit. Outside of Platinum, this is your only way to get her normal version. So we're counting 2 stars for Tia, 3 stars for Farm and Quest, and a further 1 star for the resource gathering, she's going to drag you along for a 6-star farm. But our last frame in the mid-game puts them all to shame. Let's talk Cora. She is obtainable from Sanctuary Onslaught, a unique endless mission provided by Cephalon Samaris. Her components are scattered across rotation A, B, and C reward tables, with her main blueprint also in rotation C, achieved every 8 continuous rounds of Sanctuary Onslaught. Elite Sanctuary Onslaught does not drop her pieces, so you have to farm the lower level one. The average player will not be getting these drops quickly. The highest drop rate is still only 11.28%, about a 1 in 9 chance, and rotation C is over 20 minutes. An average set takes over 5 hours to obtain, with 1 in 20 players needing over 12 hours. While a very low chance, 1 in 1,447 players running Sanctuary Onslaught, including cutting it short if they would acquire all rotation C drops but still needed an earlier part, 1 in 1,447 will need over 24 hours of Sanctuary Onslaught to finish their Cora set. And after this grueling amount of mission running, the parts aren't even cheap to craft. It's mostly Star Chart resources, some Quacker Spinal Claws from the Plains of Eidolon thrown in, and a full 9 Kavat genetic codes. These are obtained on scanning a living Kavat, but not counting the ones in the Plains of Eidolon. You either scan the handful of invisible Kavats that spawn in Auric and Dalric maps on Deimos, or plan ahead to scan the many Kavats that spawn during the Sands of Inaros quest. Already done that quest? Tough, you can't replay it. Cora's blueprint set is available through the circuit and is the #1 easiest recommendation to get from there because seriously, that is a long process otherwise. So Cora is 2 stars for Tia, at least 4 stars for farm time, which is the highest I dare assign anything for a single category before this gets silly, and a further 2 stars for material demands unless you are wise enough to farm Sands of Inaros or spend platinum on the genetic codes. Cora is a well-deserved 8-star farm. And now we enter into the late game. Late game story-wise and overall farm access progression, not late game as in Steel Path, Apex bosses or Fashion Frame. Just the latest that these kinds of farms come online. Some of these aren't locked behind a new war, but instead require such a level of progression as to be reasonably equivalent. Due to the higher tier of Railjack involved, I'm including Sevagoth and Ashe here. Sevagoth becomes available after completing the Call of the Tempestari quest, a side quest after the Deadlock Protocol. His main blueprint comes from the quest, leaving you to obtain the other blueprints from Void Storms in Railjack. Void Storms in Neptune, Pluto, and Veil Proxima can award Sevagoth components, with Veil Proxima being the only source that allows you to face the Grineer instead of the Corpus. As Grineer missions tend to be faster to complete due to their objectives, this makes that the optimal farming location for Sevagoth. In the Veil, and Pluto, you get a 10% chance per piece with each storm completed. While these aren't the highest rates for a Warframe drop table, you get plenty of other rewards in the process, so it's not a dud run even if you don't get Sevagoth's next part. For most players, the whole thing is done within 16 runs. If you're running efficiently, that should be less than 2 hours. That unlucky 1 in 20 players will need over 39 Void Storms, and 1 in 1,000 will still be dry after 76 runs. Materials wise, Sevagoth's build is exceptionally normal. He requires mostly ordinary Star Chart material, and then some Railjack material you'll easily acquire on the way to getting his part, so that's no concern. So with 3 stars for the tier, 2 for the missions, 1 for the quest, Sevagoth is a 6-star frame. Also in the later stages of Railjack is Ashe. While you can begin farming his pieces as early as Venus Proxima, that will only get you his systems. Neptune Proxima missions can award his Neuroptics, and Pluto Proxima is needed for his chassis. You can farm your choice of Survival, Defense, Exterminate or Volatile in each region to get him, although the drop rates are much worse for the non-endless missions. They award him less than 5% of the time, while the endless ones are 12.5% to 13.3%, depending on which tier it is, with 2 awards possible in the first 2 rotation drops thanks to A, B, C rotation system. It is up to you if you prefer Defense or Survival. although defense with its 3 waves per rotation can be faster if you have a sensible loadout. Likewise, you can actually go endless, getting rotation B and C rewards, then looping back to Ash farming. With the Ender strategy, you may prefer survivals for the chance of an Ambassador blueprint. The average player will need 11 pairs of rotation A drops to get Ash. 1 in 20 will need 24 or more runs, and 1 in 1,000 will need 42 or more runs. At 15 minutes for 2 rotation A's, which is a leisurely pace unless you get the double boarding objectives before starting the interior mission, this would take typically a little under 3 hours for a full Ash set. So Ash gets 3 stars for the tier, 3 stars for the missions, and with no extras to worry about. Ash is also a 6-star frame. Ash can also be farmed on the circuit instead, and is a much more efficient pick than either Frost or Nyx that share the week with him, so you do have that alternative. With Railjack aside, we can look at the frames hardlocked behind the new war. While completing every node available prior to this quest also unlocks Steel Path mode, I'm going to overlook it on the basis that most players, having just got here, will not be equipped for Steel Path. All times and methods I give will be normal mode, but farmed effectively. Jade becomes farmable after completion of the Jade Shadows quest, which awards her main blueprint. Then you can run the Unique Ascension mode to get her. Each of her parts drop from the same mission, each with a 4.63% drop rate, not exactly high. Being one of the new age frames though, like with Citrine and Koumei, Jade's mission also awards vestigial motes as a currency to spend with Ordis. This grants an alternative method to get Jade, putting a cap on the time to farm her fully. Due to purchasable blueprints, very few players will finish a Jade set in 8 runs, yet 1 in 3 players will be done in 9 runs. Between 9 and 16 runs, the chance of a full set climbs steadily to 60%, then jumps again at 17 runs to 91% chance of a full set. At the absolute extreme end, less than 1% of players will need 26 runs of Ascension, and roughly 1 in 80,000 would need the final 27th run to just buy everything with the worst luck possible. The bulk of everyone's experience will be in the roughly 1.5 to 2 hours bracket, which, combined with the 3 stars for tier, brings Jade to a 5-star farm. The resources are perfectly easy to afford at this level. In a different direction to Jade, completion of Whispers in the Wall allows for the farm of both Dante and Corvex. Dante is farmed from Disruption in the Intrati Labs, with all components and his main blueprint all on rotation C. With just a 5% drop rate for each component, and 7.5% for the main blueprint, Dante once again benefits from being available in a currency shop. You acquire Vessel Capillaries from defeating the Demolishers and can turn those in for Dante blueprints as needed. Once again, this creates a surge of completion at an early breakpoint, with about 50% of players done farming Dante at 16 rounds, whether you do that in one go or split it into 2 runs of 8 rounds for an easier time with the levels. Outside of that breakpoint though, it is generally faster to keep farming one mission as much as possible without failing. At the extreme end, truly 1 in a million, you could need as much as the high 40s of rounds to finally squeak out the capillaries while never getting a Dante drop. But crucially, almost everyone will need to buy at least 1 part for the most efficient rate. Dante's resources are a bit more Intrati themed than other Warframes and can present a bit of extra effort to put it all together, but should be quick to finish if you didn't get everything you needed while getting his blueprints. For that then, Dante is 3 stars for tier, 1.5 for mission time, and 0.5 star for resources, a 5-star farm. Corvex on the other hand, does not come from a single mission. Corvex can be obtained from some of the bounties provided in the Sanctum Anatomica, with a relatively low 12 to 13% drop rate per part. His main blueprint is given for completion of Whispers in the Walls, skipping that at the least the first time around. From drops alone, this would take typically 21 bounties to get a full Corvex set. However, Corvex parts are also available from Bird 3 for standing at 20,000 standing apiece. As bounties award up to 5,000 standing in themselves, or up to 3,000 if you do the max which afford a chance at a Corvex piece, you would be gathering quite a bit of standing along the way to trying to get a set together. In reality, you will usually obtain Corvex much sooner, to the point that if you ran 21 tier 3 bounties and still never got a piece, you'll probably have enough standing between bounties and Voca pickups to just buy him outright anyway. That said, you do need to actually rank up with the Octavia to buy the Corvex pieces, which will run into daily standing cap issues. This adds an extra 0.5 star to the farm for the extra soft lock and progress. Just like with Dante, it's unlikely you'll need to spend too much time resource gathering after earning a full Corvex set, mostly only if you got too lucky on getting his parts quickly. So we have 3 stars for the tier, 2.5 for the standing and mission grind, half a star for the standing limits, and a final half star for the materials. Corvex is 6.5 stars. After Whispers in the Walls, you can then head on into the Hex quest, unlocking 1999 and 3 more frames connected to that time-travelling mess. One such is Araxia, farmed through Ileweaver spirals in Duviri immediately after the Hex quest. These spirals are unique and separate from the others, with a guaranteed fight against an Araxia, but not a guaranteed Araxia part drop. No, her main blueprint and all parts have a 7.69% chance of dropping. Once again, this is alongside a currency drop to spend with Acrithis, should your luck not provision you with sufficient blueprints sooner. 20 Scuttle Husks will afford you a component blueprint, while 60 buys the main blueprint. With that shop available, and a necessary option for the fastest farming, half of everyone will have a full Araxia set in 5 runs of Ileweaver. Nearly 90% done in 6 runs, and only 3 in 1,000 players will need to go to the hard max of 8. By 8 runs, you can just buy every part. But then, there's the resources. Like with Kullervo, if you've not been stockpiling Duviri resources, you'll need to go on an adventure in normal Duviri to afford Araxia, in addition to resources from the Entrati labs and normal star chart materials. This means for Araxia, she's got 3 stars for tier, 2 stars for the Ileweaver runs, and 1 star for the material gathering, another 6-star farm. Also available immediately, on completing the Hex quest, is Citrine. Just like Corvex, you get Citrine's blueprint on main quest completion, his parts from bounties, and a backup plan of buying parts for standing. In fact, aside from a slightly lower drop rate for Citrine's parts from the respective bounties, these two are nearly identical in process. What Citrine lacks in drop efficiency, he just slightly makes up for in the easy composition of materials needed to build him. It's pretty much a nothing between them. So just like Corvex then, Citrine gets 3 stars for tier, 2.5 for mission time, 0.5 for standing cap barriers, and 0.5 for resources, a total of 6.5 stars. After Citrine is Temple. Temple is only farmable after you reach rank 4 with the Hex Syndicate. As this is currently both the farthest requirement of any frame in the game, and the standing cap limit is one that you can't start before doing the Hex quest, I'm going to go so far as to call this a tier 3.5 progress requirement. Keeping Temple at 3, like any post-new Warframe, just doesn't seem right when they're 2 quests and a rank 4 grind later. Once you do reach the point to be able to farm Temple though, they're a modern era farm with again low individual drop rates from the stage defense mission each round, but also a currency system to pick them up from Flare instead. Similar to Jade, the completion rate spikes to 32% at 6 sets of 12 waves of defense, better than 50% odds after 8 runs, better than 90% after 12 runs. And everyone is definitely done within 17 runs. Temple also comes with exceptionally ordinary material costs, which you'll almost assuredly have before even getting all their components, except for the ever-vanishing Argon Crystal. Because the standing grind is incorporated into a tier of 3.5 stars, all that's left is the mission time at 2 stars, making Temple a 5.5 star farm. The second newest addition to the Warframe roster, as of the time of me writing this video, is Noko. Noko is available immediately after the new war by taking a little trip into a fungal overgrown vent in Fortuna. There you can meet Nightcap, a one-man syndicate without a standing grind. Instead, he has bounties and mushrooms for you to handle. Noko's drops are unusual here. Each of the 3 core bounties are assigned one of Noko's parts at a low drop rate. Atop that though, Noko's main blueprint is in each of the bounties, regardless of which one you do. Nightcap also provides a rotating Steel Path bounty option, which can allow for accelerated farming rates for a specific bounty, and therefore a specific Noko component. However, as I mentioned earlier, we're focusing on normal mode only for this. Via normal mode, you are very, very likely to obtain a full Noko set before you are able to obtain any Noko pieces from the shop. This is because all the blueprints are locked behind rank 4, requiring you to have fully completed gathering 12 out of the 16 mushrooms in the field guide. To cut a long story short on the mushroom process, each bounty has its own set of 4 mushrooms unique to it, and then 4 more mushrooms common to all bounties. The highest number of samples needed to complete a mushroom's field guide is 24 in one of the bounties, 30 in the other 2. Very roughly, you can expect to get 1 of each of those samples per run, accounting for a little bit of Fergalite to top you up. This comes out to around 30 of one bounty to max out its field guide. Max for 12 mushrooms then is about 60 bounties, potentially down to 50 if you have plenty of spare Fergalite, but entirely focused on just 2 bounties. Doing this means skipping the chance of one of the Noko parts entirely though. Alternatively, running bounties for ordinary drops to Noko, the average player will be done in just 27 normal mode bounties. With 52 bounties, 90% of players will have a full Noko set and yet likely still not be rank 4. So to be quite honest with you, as much as the currency shop is there for Noko, like with many other modern era farms, it is largely one that won't matter for your first run through. Save your Fergalite and just let the mushroom samples build up as you farm for other things from that area. It's better to choose the bounty that gives you the parts you want. At roughly 7 minutes a Noko mission, including loading times, a typical time for a Noko set is around 3 hours, rising to about 6 hours for 90% completion chance, and about 7 to 8 hours if you're unlucky enough to have to rely on the shop system. After getting his pieces, Noko needs some slightly odd resources you may not have focused on getting from the Orb Valis. Thankfully, they are very easy to get in a short amount of time. All told then, that's 3 stars for tier, 3 for mission time, and half a star for the resources. Noko is a 6.5 star farm. Talking recent frames, the most recent is Uriel, released with the old piece. You also receive the Uriel main blueprint from the quest. Once you descend all 21 floors, you can repeat the final fight indefinitely until the week resets. This acts as a time gate of sorts, but one you play through rather than wait through. As for the fight itself, well, if you're well equipped, it can be completed as quickly as a very early game assassination mission, with times under 2 minutes very doable. Each of Uriel's component blueprints are available here with a 1 in 8 drop rate, with the other 5 in 8 going to weapon drops. Given how quick the fight is then, this is a very quick farm. Around 50% of players would get all needed Uriel pieces in 12 runs or less, which will take under half an hour. After so many farms of multiple hours, this is an incredibly short time. But if you should get unreasonably lucky, say you're the 1 in 100 who spend over 43 runs getting a set and don't want to try again, there is Roth's Surplus. Each component blueprint can be purchased for 25 Mayfica, obtained from running Descendia. It drops them commonly from crates around the map, so I highly recommend you focus on looting during each floor. For example, when I ran Descendia top to bottom on normal mode, I got 61 Mayfica on a run that included a loot focus floor, down to 53 Mayfica without one. A single run of Descendia, appropriately looted, more than removes the issue of bad luck in getting Uriel pieces. The only thing left to do once you have all those pieces is to construct them. That's where the work comes in. The resources needed are all found in the Imperator Rebellion, also unlocked with the old piece. Resource boosters, drop chance boosters, resourceful retriever companion modding, relay blessings, loot frames, and just sheer player count all contribute to increasing your drops. I collected personal and community drop data and found that, not counting boosters, normal mode solos you may be looking at around 20 runs of Imperator to have the required resources. Jump to Steel Path, and this can come down to about 10 runs. Run in a group on Steel Path, and it can halve again to about 5 runs. One community member, stacked with a full squad, every booster, a loot frame and a loot companion, managed to get more than enough resources in a single run. Taking a similar approach to the rest of this video though, dismissing Steel Path, paid boosters, and more than incidental support from allies, that makes it about 10 runs or 2.5 hours to get the needed resources. You will almost certainly get those materials on the way to unlocking even one of the Textless artifacts. It is arguable then that you'll get the material as a matter of course, rather than specifically farming for it. You can ignore the material stars if that describes your playthrough. In combination then, this comes to 3 stars for tier, half a star for the 20 Descendia floors before you can buddy Rove, half a star for obtaining the blueprints, and 2 stars for the materials. Uriel is a 6-star farm. You might be wondering at this point if I was ever going to mention the Zaraman. As we enter into our top 5 frames, one of whom you've already met in Korra's 8 stars, it's about time we do that. On completion of the Angels of the Zaraman, you unlock access to, well, the Zaraman. This also means access to the bounties to farm for Gyre. Unlike Corvex, Citrine, basically any other bounty frame so far, Gyre has a main blueprint in a separate bounty too, meaning you've got 4 different bounties to farm to complete her set. Also unlike Corvex and Citrine, Gyre did not ship with the modern pity shop. Get lucky or get grinding. This means that getting a full set for Gyre takes on average 32 bounties. If you do that in an efficient 4 minutes per bounty, that's still over 2 hours. But you won't. 4 minutes per bounty is if you get the good bounties, and the way the missions and objectives rotates ensures that's far from reliable. Add on that 1 in 20 players will need over 65 bounties, and 1 in 1,000 over 110 bounties, this can be a doozy. The saving grace is that all those missions in that region will assuredly net you the resources needed to build Gyre, so long as you put in the effort to loot as you go. For her then, it's 3 stars for the tier, 3 stars for the mission time, an extra 1 star for some bounties just being such a poor match for you that you may as well wait for the rotation. She's a 7-star farm, claiming 5th place below Cora. Then there's Varuna. Varuna could have been a mid-game frame, as her farm is accessible before the new war. Despite this, Varuna requires Void Gel Orbs to construct, which are only available after the new war, although some lucky people got a handful as a Twitch drop one time, and later got very confused as to how they could build her so soon. Varuna's full set of blueprints, main included, come from Conjunction Survival on Lua after the War Within. While you can farm on Uvarium, the Circuus node provides much better rates. Like with many modern farms, Varuna has a currency system built in to buy parts you don't get as drops, capping the maximum duration of her farm. However, even when taking this into account, with 20-minute runs to Rotation C for those chances at blueprint drops, Varuna still has a typical time to parts of 11 runs, nearly 4 hours when on normal mode. Under 2% of players will have to go to over 15 runs, over 5 hours, with the cap at about 22 runs or over 7 hours. Last time I covered this, I did focus on Steel Path farming as more efficient, but the simple truth is a lot of people either don't want to or are ill-equipped to do that early enough to match when this farm opens up. Then, having got Varuna's pieces, you need the materials. Not just the extra Thraxplasm, so don't spend that to get parts until you fully have enough, but also the Void Gel Orbs from the Zaraman and the 20 Somatic Fibers. Somatic Fibers simply do not drop enough from the Varuna missions, leaving you then better off farming Apollo Disruption on Lua for a while to get that material. Which means for Varuna, updated to account for normal mode farming, not Steel Path, she clocks in 3 stars for the tier, 4 stars for the mission time, and a further 2 stars for the material grind. That's a 9-star farm, beating out even Cora. Vying to share second place with the re-rated Varuna, we have Caliban. His main blueprint is just buyable from the market for credits. His parts are farmed from Nama bounties that unlock after the new war. Unlike other bounty farms though, Caliban only has a single part available to be farmed at any one moment, rotating every 2.5 hours. Yes, 2.5 hours. If you need his Neuroptics and log in just a minute too late, it'll be 5 hours before you can even try. When you do manage to grab the correct bounties, either on the Plains or the Valis, getting a set of his parts there will take on average 8 bounties, assuming you hit full bonus. 1 in 20 people will be running over 18 bounties, 1 in 1,000 over 30 bounties against Nama. As bounties are relatively short, the average here should be under 2 hours. However, it is impossible to get lucky and complete this farm much sooner. Building Caliban requires Nama Isoplast, which only drop from those very same bounties. For everything but the first stage, Isoplast drops are competing with the Caliban part drops. The simple average of Nama Isoplast per unbonus bounty is 2.19, regardless of when or where you do the bounty. With 40 Isoplasts needed, that's an average of 18 bounties, or 14 if you always hit full bonus. On top of this, you need fishing and mining resources, some niche star chart resources, and 9 anomaly shards, which are required only 1 at a time from clearing a Murex in Grenier Vale Proxima Railjack missions. As this Murex won't spawn in a Void Storm, you cannot stack it with Sevagoth farming. In combination then, that's 3 stars for the tier of post-New War, 2 stars for the soft log of being unable to proceed with desired blueprints for up to 5 hours at a time, 2 stars for the time actually getting the blueprints, and a further 2 stars for the resources along the way. Caliban is now our joint second most chunky farm at a full 9 stars, 1 for each Murex you need to take down. Which brings us to the top end of the scale, the one and only frame that denies anyone else the crown of 10 stars, and a set of decisions I sorely hope are not repeated. I can only be talking about Styanax, a frame whose farm was so long on release and basically unchanged to this day that he was given out for free to everyone with his update. Step 1 is you must complete the new war and then the side quest Veilbreaker. This immediately puts us in the late game frames for 3 stars. Step 2 is running the Break Nama missions to acquire stock. The Break Armor mission can be run any number of times, but only awards the majority of its stock on the first completion of each weekly challenge. If you fail or skip a challenge, you can repeat the mission to focus it and ignore the completed objectives, trading out time for a more casual approach. Let's assume you play efficiently and do all objectives first try each time. With no stock pickups, this gives you 105 stock each week. Up to another 10 stock can be picked up per run, so you can get this to potentially 115 stock in one run. Styanax's full set costs 270 stock, so only 3 weeks of missions are required to afford the full set. This competes with other purchases, like the 40 stock each Archon mods, a total of 200 stock if you wanted all of them. But even if you skip the mods, you cannot buy Styanax after the 3rd week. Step 3 is ranking up Karl's garrison. This is done by successfully completing a mission on a week. If you do not do so, you make no progress and the mission does not rotate to a new one. You must do all 3 missions, and you must still do one more mission on yet another week to progress to rank 5 to unlock Styanax's main blueprint. Taking that you do the first mission the moment you complete the quest, that's 3 one-week time gates. As the second harshest softlock in this whole video, second only to waiting for the circuit to roll to the week you want, that's worthy of 3 stars in itself. The Break Armor missions have become a little faster since their release, on account of Karl gaining increased movement speed, a new loot and enemy radar, and the additional stock pickups augmenting your income, especially on repeat runs. With the benefit of experience, you can run Karl's missions in under 15 minutes, though inexperience and some unguided item hunts can see runs exceeding 20 minutes. If you have to repeat a mission, say if you died or got veiled, then it takes longer still. Getting the requisite minimum missions done then will easily take over an hour, and quite likely around 2 hours to complete, adding on 2 more stars. But like some frames, Styanax isn't done when you get the blueprints. You need materials. Mining material from all 3 open worlds, fishing material from Cetas, Entrati Lanthorns, Thrakplasm, Void Plume Quills, Argon Crystals, and 12 Orokin Cells. Some of this you'll have just passively gathered, but plenty will require you to go out of your way if you hadn't already, as this covers at least 5 different farming locations, as much as rank 4 with a Syndicate, and from previous surveys is not something a player usually just has lying around across the board. Styanax deserves 2 final stars for the material grind. I am left to conclude then that Styanax remains a 10-star grind from start to finish. Considering he is 175 platinum in the market, slot and reactor included, this of all frames may be the one to trade or buy platinum for. All of the top 5 frames here are fiercely competitive for the title of longest realistically. Gyre with her many bounties on rotation, Chroma with the many runs of Sanctuary Onslaught or a potentially long wait for the circuit, Varuna's choice combination of a long mission farm and a second specialist material demand, Caliban's softlocks and required railjack section, or Styanax's non-Warframe missions and weeks of waiting. But don't let the long ones get you down. In the time it took to watch this video, at normal speed anyway, you can also pick up half a dozen early game frames, securing the knowledge they don't fall off in power later down the line. And if you feel like you'd rather buy your way through, you can check out my guide on 25 ways to farm platinum in Warframe instead. Now you know which frames take the longest in 2026. As I mentioned earlier, you can get more behind the scenes on Patreon with the link below. That's all from me for now, so as always, don't you stall, farm them all, and fight well, Tenno.